The Canadians are aware of the situation and by no means minimize the severity of Logan's action.
I'm problematic. It's a problem.
Low quality fans of a high quality Bruins team, welcome back. A lot of exciting things to talk about. Now, I try to keep this Bruins centric. I try to make sure that we're mostly talking about our boys. But a lot's happening, especially north of the border. Last night was the draft. The Bruins made a great pick. We'll get there. But we gotta address this issue that came out last night. With the 31st pick of the draft, the Montreal Canadiens, just off of a miracle run to the finals, they decided to go a little off the board. And by a little off the board, I mean he literally wasn't on the fucking board. Logan Mayu was selected. He took himself and asked politely to take himself out of the draft. He said, "Don't select me." This young man, 17 years old, fucked up. He, as many of you know, took a picture he wasn't supposed to take. It was a non-consensual picture of a consensual act. I think it's important that we paint that in the proper verbiage. And he shared it. Can't do that. It's not fair. It's morally corrupt. Bad move. And I'm sure he got plenty of advice on this, but I want to give the kid a chance. He made a statement. He apologized, and he said, "Do not select me in the draft. I need to mature. I need to be better than this." Now, what that does is delays his goal of getting to the NHL, so it is a consequence, and it allows him to work through this in a patient manner to then avoid having it define his career. He's 17. He made a really stupid move. I know there are a lot of opinions ranging from he should never play in the NHL again, or ever, I guess, to slap on the wrist, he's a boy, he made a mistake. Wherever you lie in that, we have to at least allow the kid to try, right? To try to make things right. Here's the biggest issue of what happened last night. Obviously, the actual thing happening was the biggest issue. But last night, Marc Bergevin and the Montreal Canadiens decided that they were going to choose him anyway, earlier in the draft than we thought he would get chosen, first of all. But they were going to tell him to go fuck himself, come to the Canadiens. They put out a statement, and here it is. You can pause the video here because I do not want to read this whole thing. They made a statement mentioning that they weren't trying to minimize it and that they were going to work with him to get to where he should be maturity-wise. The problem with this statement is by selecting him in this draft, you have removed any consequences of the actions that he took, which there should be consequences for. You have absolutely minimized by your actions what happened. You have spat in the face of the victim and her family, and you suck. Like, what are you thinking here? And at the point that they selected him, the panel, the esteemed panel of hockey analysts went, kind of wish probably the league didn't want that to happen, right? So now we wait. We wait for the league's reaction. I'm hoping one of two things happens. Either Bettman goes, haha, cute, nice try. Your first is forfeit. He's not selected. Done. Nope. Or Logan himself comes out and just goes, nope, I appreciate it. Thank you for selecting me. I am not there. I'm not ready for the NHL. I don't deserve this. I need to face the consequences of my actions. As a man should. Either of those things happens, we all just get to go, great, fuck the Habs. This was an embarrassment. And the fact that no one in that room had the balls to stand up and go, hey, this is a terrible idea. Is he really that much better than any other player we could select, or are we just trying to get cutesy here? This decision is so insulting to the victim, and it's also insulting to the guy who's trying to correct what he did. No one's a winner here. You made things worse. Look, I usually don't talk about controversial stuff. I'm not a smart enough guy or involved enough to really have opinions on this stuff. But there's sometimes you just see something and go, that ain't okay. I mean, look at the Blackhawks organization and all the stuff coming out of there. You can pretty easily go, that ain't okay. This is not okay. And again, the biggest victim here is the victim of the actions prior, not the player. I just think the Canadians have made it way worse. But how about we talk about our boys? R.I.P. Jeremy Lauzon. Good luck in Seattle. Again, not patting myself on the back for that selection. There's a lot of that going on right now. If you're on Twitter or Facebook, everyone's like, oh, I called it. I told you. This was, for the most part, pretty easy to call. Like 80% of us got this one right. And yeah, there was a chance they went a different direction. But guys, everyone's tooting their own horn right now pretty heavily. And there hasn't been that much stuff that was difficult to see coming. If you were one of those people that went a different direction, you knew when you were going that direction, because we've had conversations about it in the comments. You were like, yeah, I see that. I think there might be a ton of defensemen available, so they might go Richie. Those are all good points. But we all knew where the highest odds were. We need to stop patting ourselves on the back about everything. I think Lauzon's going to be really good for them. He's going to play a probably bottom pair role, maybe top 4, and do a bunch of penalty killing. Good for them. Good luck, buddy. To the draft. Now, there's a lot of deals that happen before the draft, and I'm going to talk about some of the ones that affect the Bruins, not all of them. We're going to do a lot more in-depth dive when it comes to the podcast that we are recording tonight. I'll link to the channel below. With the 21st pick of the draft, the Boston Bruins didn't go off the board. They went with Fabien Lyzelle. This is a great pick. I didn't have him on my top selections because I didn't think he'd be available. He's a right winger out of the SHL. He's 18 years old, 5'10", $170. He is a smaller guy that's all skill, baby. All skill. And if there's one thing we need right now, it's skill. Now, I know people were expecting a defenseman or a center. There are times when you just can't pass a guy who you think is the best talent in the draft. He is highly regarded as a top 10 talent. Quick hands, quick feet, great decision making, can embarrass players who are standing still. The guy can shoot. He has finish to it. He lacks some consistency at times, but for the most part, he's been showing out. The reason he was available at 21 is there has been a lot of chatter about attitude, issues with his personality, but no one seems to be able to come to a consensus on what that actually means. You've heard little bits of it, but at the end of the day, the Boston Bruins tend to take that stuff really seriously. We don't see a lot of guys come through that need attitude adjustments. Maybe Dougie Hamilton. But other than that, they do their research on this stuff. PJ Axelson was our scouting coordinator in Europe. He's the one who had the most eyes on this kid. He said, go for it. If he has the potential as a top 10 talent, I don't see why we would go a different direction. I love the pick. He's a few years away, obviously, as always, when you draft a new guy. The guy's got skill for days. Doesn't have the size, but he's a right winger. He probably won't need to get heavy. He's kind of a Brad Marchand comparable, but let's not put too much pressure on him right out of the gate. I also feel like, and this is a bit of an assumption, that he fell that far because with COVID, it was so hard to get boots on the ground in a lot of places. And we had our European scouts out there. He had been watched a lot by them. I think teams that maybe weren't in the area as much, they weren't able to get guys out there because of COVID, might not have had him as high on the board. We'll see what happens. It kind of feels like there was a lot of talent in that first round. There was a lot of guys people were excited about. That might be because of lesser scouting, so it's harder to come to a consensus in top 10. I like the pick, and I'm excited he fell to us. In other Bruins news, Taylor Hall is a Boston Bruin, baby! 4 more years! Where have I heard that before? 4 more years. Taylor Hall has signed a 4-year, $6 million AAV contract with the Boston Bruins. There is a no-move clause throughout. That's fine. I don't think we're really worried about that. We get him for really the rest of his best years until he's 33. If he can continue looking good like he did last season, the end of last season, then I'm excited about this. Yes, there's some risk to it. Yes, he had a very small sample size with us, but his two line mates are supposedly coming back. Obviously, Smith is. Krejci is up in the air. We'll get there. I think this is a really good fit for him. The statements that he made are he's all in. And he wanted to go to Boston because he knew there was a chance for re-signing. He wanted to stay. You got to do the due diligence. You still got to try to get your money and everything. I'm pretty happy with this. I don't think this is a bad contract for him or for us. Now, I mentioned that Krejci is hopefully coming back. A lot of anger at Don Sweeney yesterday. A lot of trades were made, and we're going to hit on a couple of those. But David Krejci is a very pivotal part of all of this. People are very upset that we don't have an update from Krejci. Guys, we have to remember that David Krejci is, in fact, a human being. He has played a lot of games for the Boston Bruins. He is not sure if he's going to continue playing hockey. And that conversation takes time. Nothing good comes from Sweeney berating him and pushing him and trying to lock him down. Sweeney is doing the humane thing of letting the man make his decision. This is a hard decision. I don't think he ends up on another team. I think he's with us or retires. And I think if he's with us, it's a year. I think it's a year. But don't make this out to be that Krejci's screwing us, because he's not. He's just having a hard time with a very tough decision. Or that Sweeney's asleep at the wheel, because he's not. This is just two grown men trying to figure out if their partnership is going to continue or not. That being said, reports have come out that the Bruins are in on Dvorak from the Arizona Coyotes. Conversations happening there. I'm not sure what the asking price is. We did miss out on Garland. Here's why we missed out on Garland. I'm actually going to read it too because it's a lot. So, Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, with 12% of his contract retained, are going to Vancouver for the 9th overall selection. That was the Coyotes' only selection in the first round because they had to forfeit theirs this year because of all the bullshit they did. The Coyotes will also receive Eriksson with his full $6 million at 1 year, Roussel $3 million at 1 year, Beagle $3 million at 1 year, a second rounder next year, and a 7th rounder the following year. That's a lot. The way this really shakes out to me is actually not a good deal for Vancouver. Now, the Garland for first, the 9th overall, that was suspected. You were going to assume it was going to take a first to get Garland. Great. 9th overall, kind of a heavy pick, but this year's draft, less scouting, you weren't sure about it. Here's where the deal gets kind of bad for Vancouver. They took, because some of it was retained, $7.1 million in cap space back for 6 years in Oliver Ekman-Larsson's contract. That is not a good player right now. He was replacement level at best for the past couple of years. And I know you could kind of say, well, bad on a bad team. Guys, at a certain point, some players are the reason the team is bad. And it really looks like it was pretty heavily his fault. So they take that 7.1 to send back a $6 million, $3 million, and $3 million contract. So about $12 million. That expires in a year. Vancouver has so many bad contracts. And there's word that the Bruins are looking at Holtby, so hopefully some of that gets retained. But that's a whole nother conversation. That's very fledgling, by the way. We're not really sure where that is. The 2nd rounder and the 7th, whatever. But Vancouver took on a lot of cap and gave up a 1st, a 2nd, and a 7th. I don't know. It's Garland's great, and I like Garland a lot. We can't be upset at Dawn for not getting Garland because we got priced out. There's no way. There's no way we could have done that. We did not have as high a pick as they did, and we are not willing to eat that much cap space for the next 6 years. It just wouldn't have worked. So don't be mad at Sweeney for that. Another one I got upset about, and then some people reminded me of some stuff. Jake Bean went for a 2nd. Jake Bean, left defenseman out of Carolina, RFA, went for a 2nd round pick to Columbus. He would have been a perfect fit on the Bruins. We didn't have a second round pick this year to give. That's some tough titties, boys. That one would have been nice. So we missed out on Jake Bean. Pavel Buchnevich from the Rangers will go to the St. Louis Blues for a second and Sammy Blais. This sucks. Buchnevich is a absolute first line talent in my mind. He would look great on our second line. Maybe it's again we didn't have that second rounder to give this year. This sucks. That would have been really nice to get him for such a low price. Another RFA. Look, if you got to trade for rights to get the guy, do it. Just a bummer that we missed out on both of those guys, and I think it's both the same story. We didn't have the picks. Fun fact about that, though, the reason that the Rangers probably couldn't keep Buchnevich is they don't have cap space because they're trying to aim for big fish, right? Eichel. The issue here is that they just committed $5.1 million to Sammy Blais and to Barclay Goodrow. That's a chunk of money that you really probably wanted to spend on Buchnevich. Chris Drury experiment in New York, not off to a great start, which is a bummer to me because I'm looking at my Drury right up there. But my point of this whole episode: don't be mad at Dawn yet. You can be a little frustrated. We don't have those second round picks to give up, so we missed out on a couple guys. But still a lot of fish out there. We re-signed Taylor Hall. We can't be upset yet. We can be a little frustrated that we stand pat. But around the league, you look at the Ristolainen trade. You look at the Seth Jones trade, the Duncan Keith trade. Some teams are winning by losing. We're losing out on deals. We're winning because of that. Sometimes it is good to not be involved and end up overpaying for a guy that you go, fuck, what did we just do? Seth Jones, $9.5 million. $9.5 million for 8 years, full no move. That's going to look really bad soon. He's not terrible like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's not great. 9.5 is a shit ton of money for 8 years. I had this debate with Andrew, obviously short shift pod again, about whether or not that's the worst contract in the league. Boom, just like that. I still think it's Bobrovsky, but those extra 3 years are definitely worth some consideration. Because Bobrovsky's only got 5 at 10, 8 at 9.5. Goddamn, son! Anyway, that does it for me, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Another podcast going out early next week. Get excited. We're going to talk about all this stuff in way more depth. We're going to talk a little bit more about what happened around the league. I'm pumped. The Bruins are going to make a move soon. Let's do it. Go Bees!